Morning, one and all, and welcome back to the season previews. And we're up to the New York Rangers. And boy, howdy. Putting together this roster and looking at it, actually looking at it on the board, there's part of me that's saying they have more than this, right? And I don't mean that in a way to insult the New York Rangers. It's just there's a lot of kids they're counting on this year for a team that's at the cap. So they had 78 points this past season. The year before they had 77. And if you ask Kevin Shattenkirk, A, he's not very happy with the team or with himself. He also didn't believe that they needed any kind of a rebuild, which he's wrong on that one. Now, the year before the 77-point season, the year before he signed there, 102 points. The year before that, 101. And the year before that, 113. So things fell apart, and they quickly did what they had to do to kind of retool. I would qualify it more as a retool. A rebuild to me is 3 or more years. And the impression is that now they're going to come out of it. And we'll see. Goals for, they had 227, which is 22nd in the National Hockey League. Goals against, the 272, which is 24th in the National Hockey League. And so they need to improve both. They can't just go out and get a scorer and fix everything. They also need to fix the defense, and they've tried to do that as well. And it's interesting in terms of who's there and who isn't. End of October, they were 4-7-1, so very early the Rangers made it clear they were going to be digging their way out of a hole. By the end of November, however, they were 13-11-2, and it was around there that the Rangers were playing actually pretty darn well. December, 17-14-7 at the end of that month. At the end of January, 22-21-7. At the end of February, 27-26-10. The end of March, they were 31-34-13 and out of it. And then they had 4 games in April. They wound up with a record of 32-36-14. So, poor overall record, rough season, but future's bright. They go out and they sign Panarin. And I expect him to be their most valuable player because he is literally their most valuable player in terms of who's getting paid. And he kind of has to be their most valuable player. They're putting a lot on him. Last 5 years, no playoffs in 2019 and 2018. They were out in round 2 in 2017, out in round 1 in 2016, out in round 3 in 2015. And of course, 1994 is the last time they won the Cup. And that's starting to kind of sort of become a thing because now it's been 25 years since that Stanley Cup. Out of the lineup from last year's team that finished the season, Jimmy Vesey, Kevin Shattenkirk, Neil Pionk, and of course, there were others who left during the season. I'm only focusing on guys who left after the season was done. Your goals leader this year, you know what? I said I'm just going to be crazy in my prediction, and I'm going to go right out and say that Kakko ends up being the leading goal scorer for the Rangers. So if it happens, awesome, and if it doesn't, that's okay too. I could just say I really like the kid. So there you go. Dark horse, you know what? Ryan Strome could absolutely have a big bounce back season this year. Seemed to be better after he left Edmonton. And there's room there for him to end up playing top 6 minutes. So I see Strome as the dark horse. On the what about list, I went with Brendan Lemieux because I think there's more offensive upside there for him. And it's a matter of finding the exact right spot to play him, which I think will eventually be third line. Does he end up being top 6? Nah, probably not, but he'll be a top 3 guy, whether it's on the left side or the right side, and he's going to be aggravating. He's going to make other teams very, very angry. Rangers fans are going to love him. Trade bait, I went with Vladislav Namestnikov because he doesn't belong in the fourth line. Doesn't belong in the fourth line. And there have been rumors about him being traded for ages, so I went ahead and went with him. Now, when you look at this roster, it's young. It's very young. And it's also very expensive overall. Panarin, Zibanejad, and Kakko, that's likely the line they would go with out of the gate. It's first line. It's quite the varied difference in terms of their names and backgrounds. Then you'd have Kreider and Hedel and Kravtsov potentially on that second line. Hedel's been hit and miss. This is kind of his season to show, that he is going to be a star player in the NHL. Kravtsov, there's every reason to believe he will be a hit as a rookie, but that's 3 young kids in that top 6. And for a team that's competing in the very difficult Metro Division, that makes it a tough go for them. The start of the season is going to tell you a lot with these guys. Buchnevich then would be on the third line. Brett Howden, Ryan Strome. This is why I'm saying Strome could end up on the second line, because I don't want to just hand Kravtsov second line time. And I could see Howden being ahead of Hedel, at least to start the season. That would put on the fourth line Nemesnikov, so Vladislav Nemesnikov, Elias Anderson, and Jesper Fast. And I'm not a huge fan of Anderson being on the fourth line. I think that's a position that would go better with Greg McKegg. I've got Brendan Smith here, although when you look at the depth on the blue line, Brendan Smith likely is competing for a spot on the blue line rather than as a forward. Now, in other depth up front, you've got Matt Valesky, and I'm saying that kind of doing this because I think that contract's going to be liable to be rid of. Phil DiGiuseppe, who was signed over the summer, he'll get a shot at a roster spot. Tim Gettinger got into some games this past season. Booney Eves, who's one of my favorites, because why not? Vinny Lettieri and Stephen Fogarty also got time with the Rangers. So what you've got here is you've got a roster. You can throw together 12 guys, 4 lines. There's a lot of youth in there they're counting on. If we see, let's say, Kravtsov busts this season, and he just can't get it together, or Kakko struggles, or Hedel struggles, there's going to be problems right away. So there's some instance here of the New York Rangers counting on these kids to be ready right away, and there's not a whole lot of veterans there to sort of shield them, as it were. I much prefer to see veterans there to sort of shepherd these guys in, and hopefully the Rangers have a system set up so that these guys won't be overwhelmed too early. Because again, they're playing in the Metro. The division's brutal. They're going to be playing against the Capitals. They're going to be playing against the Barry Trotz coached Islanders. They're going to be playing against the Capitals, where you got Crosby and Malkin down the middle. It's not an easy division. And of course, Carolina. I could go on and on. So the forward group is interesting. And with Panarin, it becomes expensive. The blue line is also expensive. You got Shea and Trouba. Then you got Staal and DeAngelo. Now, DeAngelo had a very good season, so he's going to need to show he could do it more than 1 year in a row. And for Marc Staal may very well still be a guy who's looked at as movable. Now, while it's okay with the idea of, well, they can trade out Marc Staal, well, they just bought out Shattenkirk. There's got to be somebody else coming in. And I'm not redoing this preview when somebody else comes in. And I say that because right now you've got Libor Hayek, and Adam Fox, Ryan Lindgren, and Yegor Rykov in that spot. Now, there's got to be somebody else coming in. There's got to be somebody else who's going to step into a spot here. And I say that because having 2 rookie defensemen, as good as Fox could be, and he could be excellent, and then, of course, you still got Rangers fans like, if we could just get rid of Staal. If this team's going to compete for a playoff spot, you've got to have NHL ready and NHL level defensemen. You got to have veterans in there. So, would Jake Gardner work here if they could work out finding enough salary cap space to trade him? I would argue that adding Gardner could make a lot of sense for this team. And yeah, Ben Hutton's still out there. He'd be a nice cheap option. Hutton's fine if he's playing third pairing minutes. His numbers were ugly in Vancouver because he played too much, way too much. He was not built to play that much. So I still see just an incomplete blue line overall. I don't think the Rangers are done, which means that the forward group, maybe that's not completely done either. In goal, they're done. Henrik Lundqvist is the starter until they drag him out of the ice. Alexander Georgiev, highly likely to get the backup job. But if Igor Shesterkin comes in and proves that he can be the backup this year already, then that may push Georgiev onto the trade block. The one thing with that is you're better off to give Shesterkin time in the American League since you view him as your goaltender of the future, for lack of a non-jinxing term. And the New York Rangers seem to be really high on him being the guy. I would think Lundqvist plays this season with the Rangers, and then next year we may be looking at Shesterkin and Georgiev as the tandem. Keeping in mind that Adam Huska is, lingering around there as well. Huska's numbers, though, at the American League level weren't great last year, so fingers crossed with Huska, but he has been passed, I believe, by Shesterkin. Shesterkin definitely has the higher upside. The biggest question you're going to have with the New York Rangers is, have they added without losing too much? So you look at losing Pionk and Shattenkirk, bringing up Trouba. It hurts their depth. I know people are going to point out that the defense was brutal last year, but there's still some depth issues on this blue line. And it's hard for me to project this team being higher than... I'm going to go with probably 5th in the division as the highest that I could see them being. And I could see, in a worst case scenario, playing that many kids, I could see them ending up at the bottom of a very tough Metro division. Putting up enough points at 8th that they might be 5th in the Atlantic, but they'd be 8th in the Metro. It's a tough call because, again, if all these kids are a hit, if we see like Elias Anderson take a huge step forward, if Hedel does, develop into that really good point scorer, if Kravtsov and Kakko, if it's an absolutely seamless transition to the National Hockey League, then this team could be explosive. But it's too many ifs for me right now. And again, on the blue line, I just feel like there's more to come, that there's something else in the offing. Because just looking at their depth chart, looking for the term, their depth chart, and yeah, I kept thinking, well, there's got to be more here. There's Darren Radish, who maybe, right? Joey Keane, Tarmo Rayanen, Rayanen. That's fine. He knows how to say his name. And Sean Day. And Sean Day split the season between the American League and the East Coast League. And as much as I'd like to see Sean Day make it, and I thought, hey, maybe he'll be a steal with a late draft pick, his defensive numbers have just been atrocious. And he spent time in the East Coast League for that. And that is not something the Rangers need on the blue line right now. So I do think that there's still something to be done on the blue line. And so it may not be complete yet. If they get that cinched up with a veteran player, kind of think like what Derek England does for Vegas, that kind of a thing where you've got this veteran player who's kind of like able to shepherd these kids along, and it could just be a number 6 guy. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, Rangers fans and all. What are your thoughts about the Rangers? Am I underselling them? Maybe, but I still have some concerns. And again, seeing just how many young players there are in this roster, it's reasonable to think they're going to have their struggles at some point in the season, whether that's early or whether that's late. And I do wonder, where is that leadership going to come from? Is Panarin going to bring that in? Is Zibanejad growing into that role? Does Kreider show that? Or are they going to end up trading out Kreider, and is something else going to happen? Again, it doesn't look to me like they're done, but with salary cap issues being as they are, I think that's kind of strapped the team to make other moves that they would want to make. So let me know your thoughts. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching. I will talk to you again soon.